So the basics. Where should we be setting up and utilizing its, different systems in our campaign infrastructure? Everywhere, right? We need to see these tools as things that can make our lives easier. We need to see these tools as, ways and the automation and things that can come up with it of ways of relieving labor, of removing monotonous tasks, of simplifying things, of making things safer and more effective. So some tools, like I said earlier, some tools will offer this wide range of features that fill more than one organizing area. And then some, but most likely, most campaigns, parties are going to need to kind of stagger a suite of tools. So some key areas: communications, internal and external. Like I said at the beginning, talking to people is what campaigns are about. How you get a vote is by engaging someone. At this point in the American political system, I don't think there's many people that care what a candidate has to really say on a platform page on their website, right? We've all been lied to by politicians for so long. Trust in our system is so low that just having and Greens really need to kind of wrap their mind around this. Words ain't shit, right? Working class communities, especially, which are the large, non-voters every election, are the largest voting bloc out there. And they're Republicans and Democrats like to, call them lazy and apathetic and whatnot. But these are largely working class people who've seen neither of our major parties help them, right? These are working class Black communities that voted for Obama and saw Black socioeconomic levels drop during his campaign, right? These are people who have, for lack of a better phrase, decided they're not going to participate in their own destruction anymore. They're tired of choosing who's going to hurt them, and so they've disengaged because they don't trust the system. Effective or not, it's a rational thing to do, right? When you've got two people beating on you, you don't say this one's better than the other. They're both beating on you. And then you get into the whole repression that we face in the United States with third parties. In Illinois, the congressional candidate in my district for the Democrats bragged when she turned in her petitions that she collected 6 times more than she needed to. Well, we'd have to collect 4 times more than her 6 times more just to get on the ballot, right? For a Republican and a Democrat in my district to run for the US House, it takes about 750 signatures. For a Green, a Libertarian, or an Independent, 16,000, right? From one congressional district. They literally keep us off the ballot because they put these levels of petitions. And same thing for president, we got to collect 25,000 in 90 days. That's 50,000 if we want to survive challenges. So in 2014 in Illinois, we collected 43,000 for governor, and we got thrown off the ballot, right? Almost 20,000 more signatures wasn't enough. In 2016, we collected 53,000, and we weren't challenged because it was just too many to challenge. So there's a whole lot of things that, play into our abysmal turnout rate, our abysmal political participation. But to overcome it, we're going to have to talk to people, right? And that means internally and externally. We're going to need to better organize with each other. And we're going to need to better and more effectively communicate outwardly to our constituents. Emma, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I had a question. If you can kind of just a little bit about that signature issue. Why is that the case? Why would you need so many signatures? Why?
Because the Republicans and Democrats control in every state the legislature and the executive. So it's one area where they are completely in collaboration, right? It's in both of their interests that it's only the two of them. And the Democrats have seemed to kind of really, their campaign strategy is, we're not the Republicans, right? When people I call it negative voting instead of positive voting. The Democrats tend to run on stopping the Republicans, voting against something rather than voting being something that you're proactively expressing your values, right? How many
Yeah.
million, 90% of Democrats support Medicare for all, but they all voted against it because Joe Biden publicly does not support it, right? 60 something percent of voters support a Green New Deal. Millions of voters voted against the Green New Deal, whether they voted for Joe Biden or they voted for Donald Trump. Neither of those people support aggressive action on climate change. So the two main, and it's often, you'll often hear things like spoilers brought up, where the idea is that Greens take votes away from Democrats. Because if we weren't on the ballot, the assumption is that our members would go and vote Democrat as a lesser evil. In 2016, exit polling showed that 60% of Greens would have stayed home rather than vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump if those were their only two options. I don't stay home, but I often undervote. If there's no one who I think deserves my vote, I don't vote in that place, and it will show up. And undervotes are a strategic way for people to say, no, I don't accept any of these options.
So then the focus becomes more on the negative vote than the positive vote.
And that is what our political culture is now around, is voting against things. And the Republicans are the same way, right? Except they're generally whipping up emotions on social issues, right? Right now, CRT is destroying America, and gay folks are corrupting our youth. But they want you to vote against those things. Not that working class Republicans don't want the things that Republicans do, right? They don't want the working class to pay for tax breaks. They don't want the few jobs that are left in rural Republican areas to be outsourced. But they get worked up on a negative vote against social issues, and then the Democrats do the same on the other side. You've got it, as Greens, we hear every time, this election isn't the time for you to challenge. We hear it every election. Oh, we've got to stop Bush. Oh, we've got to stop Trump. We're always going to have to stop someone horrible because we have two horrible.
They basically just use hate speech to incite emotion, to dictate how they want people to vote, which based off of what you're saying, which I believe is based off of a negative vote. Anyway, okay. I appreciate you saying that.
It's an extortion-based political system, right? If you don't vote for us, the other party will do this awful thing. In 2020, there was no policy from the Republicans and the Democrats, right? And Trump and Biden just we have to stop the other one. They didn't talk about.
Oh yeah, they just went at it.
Yeah, it was all personal. None of it was about policy alternatives to deal with these massive problems that we face as a society globally.
Nobody wants to solve problems. They just want to fight each other. It's like watching. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Their donors are making money, and they are making money off the problems, right? So in Illinois, we have what's considered a very progressive governor, and a lot of the things he has done are progressive. He's a billionaire. He owns Hyatt, the hotel chain. So he's made his money off exploiting service workers. He's made his money off investing in the oil and gas industry. He's made his money off investing in the defense industry. Those are his major investments that made him a billionaire, right? So he may be progressive, but he's a principal investor in the Dakota Access Pipeline. Not just somebody who had some stock, one of the biggest shareholders in a pipeline that's going to destroy our environment even further. So there's a vested interest from from our leadership, because they represent the wealthy class. They don't represent working class people. They don't represent middle class people. They represent the capitalist class.
They represent the people who can afford the lawyers.
Yeah. So how do we overcome this, right? We go out and we talk to people, right? Because if you go and start talking to your neighbors, you're going to find out that they have the same problems as you do, these bread and butter issues, right? Old school socialists called it sewer socialism, right? You deal with these issues that have a direct impact in their daily lives. Because here's the reality: if you're not gay marriage doesn't affect you in your day-to-day life, right? And so how do we get to people? We have to be better at communicating with them. That whether that be our communications through the media and the alternative media, or our direct communications with them. Another key area after communications is outreach and intake, right? We have to grow our campaigns. If you want to have a winning campaign, you need to have more supporters at the end than you had at the beginning, which means you need to be able to cast a wider net. You need to be able to bring people in who didn't know about you or didn't support you in the beginning. We need project and team management. If we're going to beat these giant corporate machines, we've got to be really efficient. We've got to be really dynamic and fluid, and we've got to be really creative. And that means we need to be really organized. We need to have our shit together. We need to be able to take in money and do fundraising. When I hit fundraising later, I'll tell Greens, and I'll say it right now, and I'll say it again later. Greens have to get over the idea that asking for money is bad, right? If we don't have money, we can't afford these systems. If we don't have money, we can't afford materials for outreach. If we don't have money, then we're exploiting people to run our campaigns. People who run campaigns, if COVID hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been Howie's tech director because I had a full-time job, right? And we didn't have the money for me to quit. And I couldn't afford to quit my almost decade-long employment to work on a short-term political campaign. So we need to make sure that why do we need money? So we can pay our staff, so we can pay our team members. And that doesn't mean that volunteers aren't an integral part, but you need key people to be, having at least a stipend. Because when you're all volunteer ran and something on your plate needs to be dropped because you're overwhelmed, you're going to drop the volunteer work. You're going to take care of your family. You're going to take care of your job. And if the Green Party stuff doesn't happen, I'll try to get it to it next week. Just giving someone a small stipend changes that dynamic. I now have to commit that 5 hours to the Green Party because I said I would, and they're paying me $250 to do it, right? We need to be able, we need systems for design, for materials, for merchandise. And design and materials in particular, again, it's great if you have someone who can do that job well and will do it for free. But these are artists we're talking about, right? And their work and their labor should be respected as best we can. And Greens can enter into this with an understanding of we're never going to have the money to pay everyone in our campaign a living wage. With the Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker campaign, we set up a stipend, and everyone that was in key campaign positions got the same stipend, from campaign manager to social media director to outreach coordinator and volunteer coordinator. We said from the beginning, we can't pay you a wage, and it went up and it went down depending on how our coffers were doing, depending on how the workload was. Right, so campaigns need money, and we'll get to that later.